Brooklyn, New York. We're almost in a month now of the war in Gaza, which has seen 1,900 Palestinians dead and 70 Israeli soldiers dead. The world is screaming out loud, it's disproportionate. We must put embargoes on Israel. We must put war crimes upon Israeli generals and Benjamin Netanyahu. But in truth, when it comes to a war between East and West, it's going to be disproportionate. The Israeli army is a superpower. It is larger than the British and French army combined. The Hamas is a rebel unit that is supported by Iran and Qatar and the rest of the Arab world. They fire missiles into Israel that can hurt civilians. If they are not in check, if we do not keep them in line, then they can do serious more damage. And one day they will have biological weapons that can do serious harm against the Israelis. Israel, being the superpower, has no choice but to go into this third world nation of Gaza and take them out and control the situation. It's going to mean an disproportionate level of who's being killed and who's not. The world knows it, but they wish to deny it because Israel is a Jewish state. If we look at the Iraq War, 5,000 American soldiers were killed, over 1 million Iraqis were killed. 1,000, I think it was, British soldiers were killed, but they killed thousands of Iraqis. The West is fully knowledgeable in the fact that when you bring a Western army against an Eastern army, a third world army, there's going to be an disproportion of levels going on here. But they want to deny that. Why? Because it's Israel. Of course. Israel is constantly bringing embargoes and being persecuted by the UN and the world, when the world does the same thing that Israel does when they're pushed into a corner by another nation. America, when you look at Ukraine, the eastern Ukraine people are Russian, but they're Ukrainian, they want to be independent, and they're fighting against the Ukrainian army because they want independence to join Russia. So the West says, no, you don't have the right, you can't do it, and they're putting sanctions against Russia for supporting them. But in truth, democracy says that you have the right to govern yourself. You have the right to make your own decisions. So why not the people of eastern Ukraine? Why don't they have that right? Why do they have to be a part of Ukraine? Ukraine was formed in the 50s by the Russians anyways. The Western world does not like Russia, so therefore they're putting their alliance with the Ukrainians to fight against Russia. It's hypocritical because the Palestinians are doing very much the similar kind of they're doing very similar to what the Eastern Ukrainians are doing. They're fighting for independence, they're fighting against resistance, and yet we support and mind you, the Palestinians are using terror, hurting civilians and all that to get their way. The Eastern Ukrainians are not doing that. When they bombed that plane, they thought it was a military plane. They didn't think it was a civilian plane. And there's much proof for that. So it's hypocritical, and it's a double standard that's going on here, and it's really not fair. And when you get into debate with somebody over this, it's very clear that this is bullshit. How can you go and say that the Palestinians have the right for independence, but the Eastern Ukrainians do not? We can't judge Israel and say that, oh my gosh, 70 Israeli soldiers are dead, almost 2,000 Palestinians are dead, and say that's not right, that's not fair, that's war crimes. Israel is a modern army. It's the greatest force in the Middle East. What do you expect? The Palestinians are building tunnels across the Gaza Strip, and they're using those tunnels as parachuters to attack Israelis from behind. The Palestinian civilians are supporting Hamas. They're supporting, even if they don't support Hamas, they're supporting the fact to go to war with Israel to fight them. Palestinians are not innocent in this fact, and it's very important to remember that. Palestinians are defending the Hamas. They are defending the will to fight against Israel, not necessarily to take over Israel, but to just kill Jews. They make that very clear in how they think, how they make videos, and how they educate their children. Hamas militants do not come from anywhere. They come from Palestinian families and Arab peoples abroad that are willing to fight against Israel just for the matter to kill Jews. We have to remember that. Palestinians when Israel fights against Palestinians, it's not just men with guns. It's people that are hiding them, people that are defending them, and people that are willing to give their lives to be suicide bombers, even if it just means their bodies, protecting the Hamas. There are a lot of casualties in Gaza because you have an entirety of 1.8 million people who wish to kill Jews. That is the reality, and that is why the casualties are so high and disproportionate to Jews. There are no war crimes going on the Israeli side. We spend billions of dollars to have precision missiles to hit precise targets in Gaza to ensure the minimum amount of civilian casualties as possible. But when you have civilians defending Hamas and fighting against Israel, you're going to have a high amount of casualties. I recommend to Britain, I recommend to France, America, and whoever is wishing to put embargoes and war sanctions on Israel, remember, the war is not over in the world. One day you will be stuck with another war. And if you put sanctions on Israel, if you put war crimes on Israel, then you yourselves are going to have to be faced with the same situation in the future. Because that's how it goes. That's why we build our armies up to the best, so we can be the best against any threat there is. You know, if America wanted to be brutal and wanted just to take over Iraq and hit it hard, there would have been 2 million casualties in Iraq, not 1 million. But they were very humane in how they handled the situation. Believe me, if it was vice versa, there would have been an entirety of Americans' destruction and the entirety of the Israeli destruction by Hamas. We try to be civilians. We try to be humane. We try to be direct in our targets. But when you're fighting against people that just want to kill you and are willing to do anything for it, you're going to have a high amount of casualties. That's life. And everybody must admit this. And if you don't want to admit it, then educate yourself. Educate yourself as much as you can, and you will find the truth. God bless. And peace for everyone now. Amen.